So that's the camera which you have to focus on.
We'll be on that camera basically all the time. Okay, we are live. Stand by. Count me down 1 minute. Coming to you in 45 seconds. How's everybody doing out there? Good?
Good.
All right.
We are now back in our studio and would love to take some questions from our audience.
Let's stand up.
Yeah.
It was after listening to what Ratanjit mentioned about perspective, it just is quite obvious how elusive achieving happiness is. I mean, it's easier said than done, I feel. Because your past always haunts you. There's no way of getting around that, and I think that's the biggest battle. So the only person I think who is equipped to be perfectly, ideally happy would be the newborn who has no past, so he's only in the present, right? So that was my question as to, you might be thinking and trying to achieve and live in the present, but what about the person right next to you who you're interacting with? He has no clue what you're doing. His reaction to the world is the same. How do you react to that person at that time and still stay in the present?
Right.
You get my
Yes.
point. I
Yeah,
mean,
your
I'm just trying
question-
to say it's you're from yourself, your own viewpoint, you're trying to achieve this by focusing on what is in front of you. But the person you're looking at,
You're communicating with.
his communications to you will throw you off. It is not ideal. It's not the same as you're thinking. So that's my point. I mean, that interaction. How do you grapple with that? How do you react to somebody who has a rather evil, vicious, whatever thing which throws you off? And that happens all the time in the world.
Right,
So
right.
that's my question for you.
Well, I think if I understand your question is that all of us have past, and we're going to meet people who are parked in past, who have opinion, who have perspective. And how do we deal with them? Once we understand that truth, when they react to us negatively, we don't blame them as a person, we blame their perspective. Their database is incorrect. So the body language, the tone, which we reflect back to them is still kind, is still loving. So when a person, after being harsh to you, receives back a positive feedback, their opinion about you changes. It happened to me all the time. When I was in business, imagine in mainstream business where there were not a guy with a turban running around and having a business, dealing with contractors, dealing with Department of Transportation. They had an opinion. So what are you doing? So, but I always understood that their data, their information about me is incorrect. So this is my responsibility to change that information, bring them into present and see who I am really. And as the time went, when they saw that, they became close friend to me. And they helped me going forward. But if you judge them on the reaction they show based on their past experience, you are the loser. Because until you understand that everybody carries that information, they are going to react from the past. you suddenly have an advantage because you are in the present. You are there to serve them. You are there to add value to them. I don't know whether I answered that question of yours or no.
No, you did, and I guess it happens so fast in life that
So fast.
I don't
So
think
it's a habit.
really, it doesn't sink in at the moment. Your reaction may not be what it should be.
Right.
So, but it does happen, I guess, with time.
So Sudarshan, you have a comment?
Well, we always talk about role models. We talk about people that we admire, people we want to emulate. And if you become such a person, and I think that's what Bhai Sahib is saying, if you become such a person, slowly you can change the world. The starting point is always yourself, and you change the world once you change yourself. Thank you for your question. Let's have the second question, please.
Sure.
So my question is that there are a lot of fears that you've accumulated, in your life, and
Right.
the older you get, the more such fears you have within you. And so, how do you live in the present then?
With those
with
fears.
those fears.
Yes. See, I think we probably covered that in earlier shows. I have done so many shows, so I don't remember because, see, there are two sides of us, clear two sides of this human experience. One side is this human body, right? The other side is the life in the human body. So the human body knows that it's going to age. Human body knows it is subjected to hurt, right? So human body would always remain in the fear mode for it to survive, because it's designed to feel heat, so it stays away from heat. It's designed to spit out bitter taste because most of the poisons are bitter, so it doesn't kill itself. So the human body mode will always be full of fear. It is only in the spiritual mode, which is the power which enlivens you, does not die. It was there before it enters your body. It will be there, but we have not habituated ourselves into living in that power mode. That is what is called spiritual mode. So we call spirituality as God somewhere around. We don't see spirituality within us. Once we begin to relate to that spirituality which is present within us, we become fearless. Because it's only the body which can die. The real me, which is present within the body, does not die. So that's it is by practicing again. Whether you get it through meditative practices or you get it through this morning exercise, which I talked about through that, or however, but your perception of you has to first change. Who are you? Are you the human body, or are you the power which enlivens the human body? Once your clear understanding is there of power that enlivens the human body, and you begin to live in that mode on an ongoing basis, your fears go away.
Bhai Sahib, you said something really interesting that hit me just now. We talk about survival mode, survival instinct, and how powerful it is.
Right.
But it is nothing but the fear instinct.
Right.
So fear is a mechanism with which we survive.
Right.
So
it's important for us, our body, to get through life.
Right.
Body always have to have that, understand that. So don't get panicked when you have fear, because that is coming from your body mode. But then you realize that ultimately you, the real you, is immune to that.
Okay. We have time for one more question, please.
I wanted to thank you both, first of all, for your input. I think that the thoughts are simple, thought-provoking, and yet challenging all at the same time. My question would be, how do you think inner peace and moral values work in conjunction with perspective?
Inner peace and moral values?
Mm-hmm.
But I see them both as the same. I don't see a difference. See, inner peace comes from knowing who you are. If we put all kinds of labels on ourselves. And once you know who you are, means that power again, which I talked about, then you see that power in everyone else. Moral value automatically happens. Can you lie to the God in front of you? You can't. So honesty happens. You don't have to practice. You don't have to write, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be this. So morality automatically happens once you are in that understanding of who you are. You are the power. You are now, if you are a religious person, you can say, that Jesus is in me. You see Jesus Christ in everyone else. So that is who you are serving. Are you going to lie to Jesus? No, you can't. So that is how your morality happens. Morality cannot be legalized. Morality cannot be taught. You remember the example of Rajat Gupta, who was head of McKinsey Corporation, and the biggest consulting firm which is sought after by all Fortune 500 companies. Their basic core value, core culture of the corporation was ethics. And he would stand up and give lectures on ethics. What happened? He ended up not practicing ethics. So you cannot teach ethics. Ethics is outcome of realization who you are. And that's what all our religions have been teaching us. Don't become a religious person, become the spiritual person. Religions are nothing more than institutions. Doesn't matter which religion you go to, if you are there to understand spirituality, if you are there to practice religion, you'll be doomed.
Well, religion are all man-made.
And they are all man-made.
So it is indeed something that comes from within.
Within.
Of course, as he stands, as the first gentleman mentioned, there is a newborn. The newborn has no experience in the past, not yet old enough to know the future, lives only in the present. Yes. The one thing that I think is also very important for us, apart from what comes from within us, up to a certain point, is also the way that we have been brought up.
Yes.
And, the nurturing that has come along with the families and the friends and the people that we encircle ourselves with, both in the past as well as the present.
See, the best way to get out of the past, how you're brought up, is to live in the present. So you begin to develop the real data, real understanding. We have amongst us amazing wisdom present. Reverend Rowan, would you kindly make a couple of comments for us on this issue, because this is your field?
Well, I appreciate everything that you're saying, and I agree with you. I mean, we deal with so many people in our work as pastors that the past has imprisoned them.
Right.
And they cannot get beyond that thing that happened. And so what we ask them to do to deal with their past is take the spiritual God that they believe in our case, Jesus Christ, and God who created us, back into their past to deal with that issue and leave it with God, and then come back into the present.
Yes.
Where you can live day by day.
You give them a technique.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To give them a way of dealing with it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you.
I think, Bhai Sahab, this morality, idea of morality you discussed, it is much more hard work, what Bhai Sahab is saying, because the conventional morality is a choice. You choose to be moral or not choose to be moral, and sometimes, in some examples, it fails. But morality as a state of being, so that you are not, there is no choice being made. So in this oneness or divine presence, morality is automatic. It's not a choice to be moral.
See, old morality comes from two areas, either from fear, whether you're going to go to hell, so let's be moral, and other comes from ego. I am a moral person. Both are phony. That's why they don't work. The real morality does not happen to us until it comes from within. Self-realization. See, this human body is completely synchronized. Your heart does not lie to your kidney doesn't lie to your liver. Why? Because they're all one. They see the same, they're serving the same body. So once we realize we are all part of this universal power, which is present in each one of us, then morality happens. Do we have time for one more question, or?
So one of the things that you have mentioned several times is that you cannot control anybody. You can only control yourself.
Right.
And you can manage others. Maybe if you expand on that, it will answer some of the other questions, that have been raised,
Yeah, see, most of the time when people come to our show, they say, well, I should bring my daughter, I should bring my son, I should bring my spouse. We are always ready to change the world, but we are never ready to change ourselves. So, but you cannot change the world until you change yourself. It is your perspective of the world which need to be changed. And once you have changed yourself, you create an aura around you which conveys your honesty, you conveys your what you are, selflessness, and all that. So that is empowering. I have been sitting at the airports, and sometimes somebody will come to me and say, Ratanjit, I saw you at such and such place, and what you taught me has transformed my life. Because these simple things, if we take into us, they will transform your life. You don't need a PhD, you don't need a lecture. The reason God has placed you in this form, He has given you everything which you need. They have sent you a complete entity, but you have never utilized those things. You are dependent on outside. My mother used to say, well, look, there are two paths. One is through knowledge. And knowledge path only works if you have capacity to do PhD in every possible subject. And then only you know that you know nothing. The other path is path of wisdom. But it says, but unfortunately, you are equipped with all the tools which only gather information from outside. Wisdom lies within you. And that is the irony. So that wisdom within you, once you begin to avail, transforms you. And then by association, whoever comes near you gets touched and gets transformed. You get control. Otherwise, you are constantly putting new laws in Congress. You are trying to control the whole world. And look at the mess we have today. Thank you for bringing.
So thank you all for your time and attention.
We'll take a break, and then we'll be live at 11.
11 o'clock.
What time? 11:05.
We'll be live at 11 o'clock.
11:05. All right.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome to our continuing conversation on the intriguing and challenging subject of happiness. I am your host, Sudarshan Sathe, and I have with me Mr. Ratanjit Sandhi, whom, as you know, I call Bhai Sahab. Bhai Sahab, we started on this exciting journey by seeing the word happiness and the way it is spelled in each letter of the word happiness as an idea, as a way station on the path of happiness. We said H for humility, A for appreciation, the first letter P for purpose. We concluded the second letter P for perspective, and now we are on the letter I. And I have a feeling that it is not only the central letter of the word, but it is the central idea of the concept of happiness. So what does I stand for?
Well, I stands for integrity. And now, integrity is used everywhere, that until you have integrity, you don't have anything. And integrity is doing the right thing when nobody is watching, and all so on and so forth. And we attach integrity to a person's character,
Right.
and so on. Integrity means that you are worth your words, you're worth your whatever you say you will do. But I think in this aspect of happiness, integrity is much deeper. It's a linchpin to the entire paradigm of happiness. And integrity means integrating with self. That's where you get integrity.
Okay.
Otherwise, borrowed integrity we all carry.
Right. So the sort of the popular notion of the word is tied up in character.
Right.
And it also has to do with you do what you say what you do, but you're saying it goes deeper.
Yeah, deeper. The true integrity cannot come to you until you are able to integrate with your core you. And here we are not talking about core you means your personality, your heritage, your culture, your religion, your any of those things. We are talking about integrating means joining and becoming one with who you really are.
Right.
That's where integrity comes from.
Okay. So you are saying, just like we discussed morality with the
Morality.
audience before, integrity not as a choice that you make on a case-by-case basis,
Yeah.
but integrity as a state of being.
State of being.
Okay. And
So-
that comes from integrating with the divinity within.
Within, yes, divinity within. So we have talked about it in just about every show, and there are many ways to come about and so on. But until or this mind, which is given to us as a data gathering instrument, and all our life, this earlier show, in the start of the show, we talked about happiness to be a state of mind.
Right.
Right, but this mind carries information. What it sees, it captures. What it hears, it captures. What it reads, it captures. What experience it goes through, it captures. But mind has to be not your master.
Right.
Mind has to be your servant. Now, servant to who?
To the divine.
That oneness within you, that
Oneness.
divine power within you, that integrity within you.
Otherwise, you feel that the mind is running all over the place.
Right over the place. See, the nature has not given us mind to decipher this world. Mind is given us to carry out our role or purpose,
Essential mission.
essential mission. And that mission is to serve the divine power.
That is our essential purpose.
Essential purpose. And it is only by serving the divine power we enhance our business. It is only by serving the divine power we enhance our relationship. It is only by serving that divine power we remain healthy. So all that is byproduct of serving that divine power.
That's interesting. So we are running after this goal of health, or that goal of business success, or this goal of good relationships.
Right.
But these are all
Byproduct.
natural byproducts
Right.
of integrating with your divinity.
Yeah, it's serving. And there are 3 steps, so to speak. Number 1 is, if you are not able to find who you are and the truth about you, which is the divinity present within you, you are not going to know who to serve, and you are not going to get instructions from it.
Okay.
So now divinity has planted an amazing police force within all of us. You know what that police force is called? Conscience,
Conscience. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Everyone has it.
everyone has it.
Yeah.
So you can always ask divinity within you, means your conscience. It'll always tell you what to do the right thing. Although, since we have not been listening to our conscience for a long time, its voice has become very feeble. So we have to, once we begin to listen to our conscience, our voice, that conscience voice becomes very clear. And it'll tell you what to do. You don't have to ask a priest. You don't have to ask anyone else. Your conscience is already within you, planted by the divine forces. It knows what is right, what is wrong. But we don't listen to it.
That's interesting.
And we listen to the logic of the brain. Brain will convince you, no, I read it there, that this guy can't be fooled. Look at, he's made $1 billion, so he has to be right. Right? So that's how the logic or mind comes and overpowers our thinking. And we say, you have to be, and then there is a word used, be mindful. Mindfulness only comes from connecting to your conscience.
Being mindful of your conscience.
Mindful means suddenly mind is engaged. Ultimately, it is the mind who is going to transact everything which you are going to do. But it has to take instructions from somewhere.
Right.
It has to, and be mindful means that you are really going forward to what you have been instructed. You are always connected, mindful. You're always connected to your core.
So that's interesting. So in a way, bypassing or transcending your ethnic identity, your religious identity, even your moral identity.
Right.
Here, everyone has the direct voice of divinity
within them.
Right. That's conscience.
Right.
So you don't need any book. You don't need anyone to tell you. Just you know the answer.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
You do know the answer. But see, the thing is that this mind is very clever. And mind is what gives you ego. Right. And ego will come back to you and pretend to be your conscience. You have to understand the distinction between the two.
That's subtle. That's difficult.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, I follow my conscience, but they are following their ego. They're following their data. They are not really following their conscience.
So how do you distinguish them?
You have to purify. You have to, that's where there are many techniques. You sit down, meditate, you sit down and be with nature, you sit down and so the more cleanliness you have, the higher your conscience is going to be.
So are you saying that if you listen to your true conscience more often than not, then it automatically gets stronger?
It gets stronger, but see, make no mistakes. Initially, starting from day one,
right?
You are not going to be able to distinguish whether it is the voice of your clever brain or ego or conscience.
So how do we tell our audience to distinguish between the ego-directed conscience and divinity-directed conscience?
Very good question. And so what will happen is, the first process is, don't just designate this is my conscience talking or this is my ego talking, or you first go on the path of self-cleansing.
Yeah.
Self-cleansing, once it starts to take place in you, and that's what religions are supposed to do, that's where good company is supposed to do, that's what meditation is supposed to do. You are, the moment you have started to cleanse, your conscience would come, and you will know that voice when you hear it.
Right. I mean, many times when we do something wrong, we know it.
Yeah, we know it.
And when we do something right, the joy it gives, we know that also. So we started talking about integrity. We said integrity is essentially integrating with the divine one within us.
Within us.
And that leads to pure conscience that is present. And then we have to strengthen this conscience.
Right.
And distinguish between an ego-driven conscience and the divine-driven conscience.
Right.
And I think that I think is the hardest. I mean, that to my mind, to distinguish and to be on guard that I'm not being tricked by my ego-driven conscience.
See, there is a litmus test to know that you have started to get in touch with your conscience. Litmus test is that we all do good things. We all add value. We all serve. We all give charity. We all do that. The day after doing something very unique, very grand, very powerful, gratefulness happens to you rather than pride.
Pride, okay, yeah.
That is the litmus test.
Okay.
So when you are still proud of your achievement, you are still parked in ego. Once the gratefulness comes through all these activities, all these good things which you have done, you realize that you are giving credit to the power within you.
Because and not to your body.
See, you are only an instrument. You have been chosen. For that, you have to be grateful. Right? The world is going to give you trophies and medals, which is fine. But you need to know that you haven't earned it. See, every time we tout about our successes and be proud of ourselves, the divinity within us and around us has a hearty laugh. Because everything which we do, which could come out of us, is in spite of us and never because of us.
Okay, so I think that's interesting. So let me see if I am able to put that in my mind and my experience. So let's say that I throw a fabulous party,
right,
and everybody loves it, and everybody says, "Oh, Sudarshan, and you throw such fabulous parties." And if I feel, "Wow, am I not the greatest?" I
right,
throw. That would be ego.
That would be ego.
But if I felt that this would be a natural outgrowth, natural state.
So you should feel grateful at that point. That look, I was chosen. And
I was chosen.
Now my mother used to say this. It says, look, as long as you understand the difference between gratefulness and unconditional gratefulness, you will not be able to practice gratefulness.
Unconditional gratefulness.
So I never understood that. What does she mean by unconditional gratefulness? I said, you have to attach gratefulness to something. Right? If somebody has given you something, if somebody has served you a good meal, you have to be grateful.
For that reason.
For that reason. So how unconditional grateful? That means without any reason, be grateful. And I never understood that till Nisha was 12 years of age. And one day she missed her bus and she said, "Dad, you have to take me to school." So I took her to school, and it so happened that we had a little time. She said, "You have to buy me breakfast." So we stopped at McDonald's and got her some breakfast. And I don't know, out of the blue, why would I ask this question? I asked her. I said, "Nisha, if I ask you this question," I said, "supposing God appears and say, 'My child, you have been great child, and I want to grant you a wish. Whatever you want, just one wish. What would you ask? And she says, well, can I talk to my dad? I said, sure. I said, what would you ask? He said, well, Dad, if I ask for money, I mean, a lot of money, God can give me all the money, right? So then I can own everything. She says, you know, that's no fun, because when I get something, and especially when I get something, a feeling of gratefulness comes in me. That is more exciting than the thing. He says, well, what if I ask for knowledge? I'll know everything. So nobody will come near me because I'll be know-it-all, right?
Yeah.
So it says, but again, when I learn something new, it's the same feeling comes in me of that gratefulness. And that's what I like. He said, well, God can make me famous, but, and then she kept quiet for a couple of minutes. He said, but Dad, can I ask God to permanently give me that feeling of gratefulness?
Wow.
And that brought tears in my eyes, because that's what unconditional gratefulness is.
So unconditional gratefulness as a steady state, as a constant state of mind.
You are parked there, because every time you are able to see things, your vision is granted to you. You have to be grateful if you want to attach to that. But the moment your gratefulness comes unconditional, that gives you a direct link to that power which we have been talking about. That's the only way to link to that power.
So a state of unconditional gratefulness. A constant state of unconditional
will connect you to that. That is how integration would happen.
That's how the integration. And in your writings and your speeches in the past, this idea of unconditional gratefulness appears again and again.
Right.
And it is a foundational idea for you. You always say that's the door opener.
That's the door opener.
Okay. So now we are able to see how integrity, integrating with the divinity, gives you this constant state of gratefulness that is not now I understand, is not dependent on anyone doing anything.
Anything, yeah.
Okay.
Because otherwise we are, you know, how can we be grateful? Look what God has given me.
Yeah.
So we are always taking, weighing what God has given me, so I should be grateful. I can be little bit grateful because God has given me only $5, you know.
Right. Or someone did something, or someone didn't do something.
Right.
So I'm constantly making a choice, a conscious choice about should I be grateful or he didn't do anything. Why should I be grateful?
We are grateful for the very experience of life.
Okay.
That's how you begin with, because that is, as long as you are able to feel it, you should be grateful. As long as you can sense it, you should be grateful.
So the natural outgrowth of that would be anyone connected with you doing anything will feel this gratefulness from you.
Yes.
Whether someone brings you a glass of water, or someone gives you a pencil or paper, or someone just is sitting,
right,
he would still feel this aura of gratefulness. And that would give you joy, because when you get gratefulness from someone else, when someone says thank you, we feel good.
See, when you have that condition of unconditional gratefulness, you have taken all the barriers away from you.
Yeah.
You are open, so anybody can approach you. Anybody is there for establishing a relationship, a deep relationship.
Yeah, you're emotionally open, you're spiritually open. Okay.
And then at the same time, since you are in the gratefulness mode, anytime when somebody has given you a great present, a new Mercedes has been gifted to you, on that day your mood is good. So anybody can ask for anything, right? You'll do anything.
Right.
So similarly, when you are parked in the utter gratefulness mode, you are willing to do anything for anyone.
Right.
You are ready to add the highest value under that condition. So that is the core ingredient for success. whoever has the highest value,
The resources flow to that.
flow to that.
So going back to your example of Nisha, if she said to you that I want to receive that feeling of gratefulness, and if you are, as you said, parked in that state of giving unconditional gratefulness to the world, then the world will experience that joy from you.
Right.
And they would be attracted to that joy.
So you can get connected to that person right away, because as you know today, they talk about communication.
Right.
They say the world we choose, the more educated you are, the higher words you choose, they only contribute just less than 7% towards communication. Rest, 93% is your body language and your tone of your language.
Wow.
And that only falls in place when you have gratefulness.
Right. So in common parlance, people talk about being judged. People are
Right.
afraid of being judged. And here, when they are talking to you, they are experiencing complete absence of judgment of any kind.
Right.
And that, I would find that very relaxing.
Yeah. See, if you see mother, a child would go to her anytime because mother never judges. It's full love, unconditional love,
Right.
right? So child is open. Most comfortable place to be around your mother.
Right.
Right? So that's what happens. The moment you are unconditionally grateful, you become pseudo mother to the whole world.
And the people feel very comfortable.
Comfortable with you.
So then people feel happy, and that happiness reflects on you, of course.
Right.
That you're now surrounded by happiness.
Right.
So I'm now seeing how integrity leading to integration with divinity, leading to a constant state of unconditional gratefulness. You're spreading joy out of you.
Yeah.
People are responding in kind.
Right.
And so now I see why this
That
is such a central
piece.
idea.
See, again, as we said, pleasures are not happiness. Pleasures are short-lived. Happiness is the inner joy.
Yeah.
The inner joy only comes from being in the state of unconditional happiness, which connects you to the divine power within you, and then hence divine power around you and everyone. So now you are always with your family. Whoever comes near you is your family, is part of you.
The divine brother or sister.
Yeah.
Okay. And that gives you this feeling of joy, this state of joy, the state of mind called happiness.
Right. State of mind
So,
concept.
okay. Again, thank you for a wonderful, wonderful conversation. And thanks to all of you for your time and attention. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thanks again.
And we are going to take 5 minutes to move back into the studio to
Okay.
take some
And
questions.
we'll take some audience questions in the
Okay.
studio.
All right.
Yes. Thank you
Thank you.
again.
Thank you.
Thank you for a wonderful discussion. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Would love to hear some questions.
I'm a student entering my senior year in high school, and these last 4 years and beyond, I know that my education will have to be the utmost priority. In the last 4 years, I've part of 7 different clubs. I've put myself as a plus 4.0, plus
Hold on.
4.0 GPA.
Hold on. What happened? Okay.
Plus 4.0 GPA, decent ACT score, but at the entire cost of putting so much stress, so much awakeness, not getting enough sleep, like 3 hours of sleep a day for some days. Should we put our education as a student, our drive for excellence, so that in the future we can have a career that would give us happiness at the cost of our present happiness today? Because we are young adults, we go out, we party, we do all that fun stuff. But as you said, we start looking towards the future more. However, as our parents look to us, they push us for this excellence.
Right.
And it only comes as stress, and stress takes away from our happiness today.
Well, see, that there are 2 paths when, as a student, when we go to college. One path is that getting good education positions you for success. And that success, quote unquote, is financial success. And it is presumed that that is going to translate into happiness. So that is the path which is presumed. But there is another path which is more important, that if our parents gave us purpose first. See, education is nothing but two. If it is used for personal gains, it gives us job, makes us a mean to earn money. If it is used to add value, it transforms you. So our purpose of life does not change whether you are a high school dropout or an MBA from Harvard. Our purpose of life is to add the highest value in every encounter. So in order for us to do that, we need sharp tools. Education is tool. Then we have higher incentive to become a better student. See, if your incentive comes from getting rich, becoming famous, you'll only go so far. But if your incentive comes from adding the highest value, you are automatically connected to power within you, because the power within you also has the same incentive, is to serve everyone you come across. So that is, I'll give you an example right here locally. There is an organization called Project Love. They were approached by this high school, a Collinwood High School in downtown Cleveland. And they had a major problem. Their girls, when they came to high school, were graduating at a very low rate, 44, 46%. And they invariably, 30–40% end up becoming pregnant, do drugs, and all that. Very bad situation. So how can you correct this? So we implemented this program called Believe to Achieve. So fundamentally, we started asking these questions to these students. Does your color define you? Does your gender define you? What is your purpose? Who are you? So once those questions took hold within them, we transformed them. Now, mind you, we did not add a single additional teacher there. We did not help them with their curriculum. We did not upgrade the curriculum of the school. And without that, by this understanding, we were able to raise their graduation rate from 40-some% to 82%. And pregnancy rate, 0. So the moment you give this purpose to a human being, you are able to transform their lives. And this is what you should have as a student. Once you know that your purpose in life is, because We are here for a short period of time. No matter how much money we accumulate, we live here. What we take with us is the thing we add, thing we give, not what we take. So, Darshan?
I think it connected very directly to the first letter P, purpose. And I think what you are saying is, if the achievement that you seek is to make someone happy, someone else happy, whether it's parents or the guidance counselor or a particular college, then that would definitely lead to stress and pain and so on. But if the purpose for achieving that is coming from within, that you are trying to add the maximum value, then you would not have any stress. And we have seen many examples where the emotional intelligence is a far greater predictor of success than domain excellence or particular skill. So if all this achievement is happening at the expense of your emotional peace and emotional intelligence, then in the long run, that won't be productive. I think that's what you're saying.
Right.
Let's have a second question.
So my question hinges on your mentioning living in a state of unconditional gratefulness. And what do you do when you're interacting with people who seem to want you to lie to them as far as because they want to feed off of you? I had a situation in which a person said to me, "Oh, it'll be great to see you." And I said, "It'll be good to see you too." And they said, "Only good?" And it made me pause. And I was like, okay, it'll be great, just to kind of go on and be on my way. But it seems like if you're exhibiting more of these characteristics as you're using in the acronym of happiness, that you will also, even though you're going to attract a lot of good, you're also going to attract the other side. So you kind of have to be equipped to deal with that as well.
Well, I think your question is goes back to that. If we practice amongst people unconditional gratefulness, how would they hinder or help us, or how are we going to be swayed what they want us to do? See, if the true desire of becoming unconditional gratefulness comes from you, you become the rose which gives out fragrance and beauty unconditionally. So it is beyond your capacity. You don't even have to think. You will be unconditionally grateful. So if it is parked in the mind as an exercise that I should be unconditionally grateful, then you will pick and choose under what circumstance you will be unconditionally grateful. So what we are talking about is going beyond that and becoming an unconditional grateful entity. So once you are there, then you become immune to everybody, whoever is around. That's who you are. And you're not looking for their approval or their disapproval, because that in itself gives you true happiness within. Your whole thing is supported by your inner mechanism. I don't know whether I answered.
No, I think you did. I mean, there is a common refrain where someone says, "How do you get to Carnegie Hall?" And the answer is practice, practice, practice. So this unconditional gratefulness is a matter of practice. And if you choose, because as Bhai Sahab said earlier, you control just one person, and that too barely, and that's yourself. So if you control yourself and keep yourself in the state of unconditional gratefulness, I think that, and I have seen this in my life, that in a class, all the students gravitate towards the calm, grateful, competent person. How do you study? How do you study for this exam? In a boardroom or in a staff meeting, regardless of the titles, people gravitate to the person who they feel is mature, is calm, is going to solve this problem, has knowledge. So this leadership position comes from being the right person. And if you just focus on that, that's what Bhai Sahib is saying, that if you focus on that, and again practice, I think you will see that the people around you change for the better. Let's have we have time for one more question.
Mine is similar. It's related to unconditioned gratefulness, and it's not so much about what. I mean, I know the point one reaches for this is like whatever. The point is that how, like you said, it's comforting. Yes, when you see a person like this, a person will automatically gravitate towards that person. It happens all the time when you see people like that in your life. But what comes back many a times is that the person, is it a genuine? Is that person genuine? Is that person real for real? I mean, it cannot be, it can't exist, it can't be. I mean, it's not possible, you know? And I think the point you were making is, it's not an offensive situation if you've understood it, but yes, but you do question yourself then when you sit down. Was it? It happens with me many times, and it's like, I see a table, a beautiful table like what Dolly had laid out just now, and a lovely breakfast. Even before tasting it, I'll say, oh, how fabulous is that? That's gorgeous. And it's come back later to say, was Pamela being really genuine? Was she being fake? And I used to question myself at one point of time that, and I actually thought about these things. Is it really, where does it come from? But then what you had said earlier, and it all actually fits, of course, as you go along, the jigsaw puzzle, that because the state of mind is such at all times that you're accepting it the way it is. But the thing to reach these things and how to be able to, and not that you have to answer anybody else because you're comfortable within yourself, because you know what you are, but it's still very difficult to live with that.
See, there is one thing I learned very, very hard is that the trust you seek from other many times is merely a reflection of how honest we are with ourselves. So after going around the world, it always comes back to you. And the moment you have become who you want to be, unconditional gratefulness, then at that point it really doesn't matter to you what others think, whether you are real or fake. It's only time after that they will realize, oh my God, that was. And you have to understand that this world is still going to crucify Jesus. This world is still going to assassinate Teг Bahadur. So you cannot go by that. We are not here to convince the world. We are here only to bring joy and happiness within us. We are here to just realign ourselves to the best we are designed by this universe. So if we focus on ourselves, not worry about what world thinks, we are much better off. Our energies are much better spent. And unfortunately, we are always worried about everybody else. And that's, our happiness is mortgaged to others. If they see something good in us, then we are happy. We are not ever take the control of our own true happiness. So,
well, I think I just like to expand on what you said, that the state of constant unconditional gratefulness is independent of other people's judgment of you. So it is not something that you're bothered about or not bothered about. You are just being yourself. You are just being grateful. But I like to answer your question in a slightly different way. There are two words in English language, like and trust. And liking can happen in a short period of time. I mean, you like someone, you meet them, In 2 minutes, you like them. But trust takes a longer period of time. And if you are able to see such a person, and as I am able to see Bhai Saab for last 35 years, my first impression was, this gentleman is really well dressed. Actually, my dressing knowledge comes from him. So, and the next day he was well dressed, and a year from then he was well dressed, and 10 years from then he was well dressed and completely coordinated. Same, or if not better, about Dolly. This is every day she puts out a table like that. So you know this is not a one shot, this is not one time and done kind of thing. So I think if you are able to see someone like that over a long period of time, then you really see that this is how the person really is. It was not a one-time thing. Thank you for your time and attention. We enjoyed having you, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Thanks again.
Thank you.